Hi, I'm Ava, 21, and my parents' last words to me before I moved out were, "Be a good girl and figure it out like the rest of us did." That was right after they handed my brother, Ethan, a $60,000 college fund check wrapped in a card that read, "We're so proud of you, son." And me? I got a 3-minute lecture about personal responsibility, a link to FastWeb, and a pat on the back like I'd just been benched. They called it equal treatment. I called it being discarded with a smile. So I packed my things, locked my bedroom door for the last time, and left. Quietly. No note. No meltdown. I just moved out. And they didn't notice until the rent was due. Let me back up. Ethan and I were the classic two-sibling setup. Him the golden boy with the charming grin, me the self-sufficient one who didn't complain. He played varsity lacrosse, could barely spell algebra, and yet got showered with "You're going places" every time he wiped his feet. I graduated with a 4.2 GPA, juggled 2 part-time jobs, tutored his friends, and still somehow became background noise in my own house. Senior year, I'd been researching scholarships like my life depended on it. Because, well, it did. I knew my parents weren't rich, but I also knew they'd been saving, that mysterious college fund they always mentioned at dinners like a sacred vault for our futures. I just assumed it'd be split between us. I didn't need much. I just needed enough. Then came Ethan's graduation dinner. Fancy steakhouse. Champagne flutes. Mom in pearls, Dad in that smug country club smile. We were halfway through dessert when Dad slid the envelope across to Ethan like it was the key to the kingdom. Ethan opened it, blinked, then grinned like he'd just won the lottery. Because he had. 60 grand. For tuition, books, and maybe a car if he's smart with it. Everyone clapped. Even Nana teared up. Me? I was the only one not holding a glass. I waited. Maybe mine was next. Maybe they had 2 envelopes. Maybe this was all just some weird ordering mistake. But instead, Mom turned to me and said, "We know you've always been independent, Ava. That'll serve you well. Just start applying for scholarships now. There's plenty out there for smart girls like you. Smart girls like me. Who don't cost anything. Who don't complain. Who smile through the slap in the face and say thank you anyway." I didn't say a word. Just smiled. Nodded. Excused myself to check my phone. I left the table, walked straight to the ladies' room, locked the door, and cried for exactly 6 minutes. Then I wiped my face, came back out, and sat through the rest of the dinner like I wasn't actively breaking inside. But that night, while they toasted Ethan's future and made plans for campus visits, I made a different plan. Mine didn't include dorm tours. It didn't include financial aid packages or FAFSA nightmares. Mine included freedom. And silence. The next morning, I woke up before anyone else. It wasn't hard, I hadn't really slept. I packed my life into 4 duffel bags: clothes, laptop, books, my sketchpads, and the tiny ceramic owl my 3rd grade teacher gave me for quiet strength. Fitting, I guess. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't make a scene. I just walked out of the house like I was going for a jog, except this time I didn't come back. I'd been secretly talking to my friend Camila for months. She lived across town in a cramped apartment above a bakery that always smelled like cinnamon and burnt espresso. Her roommate had just moved out, and she'd half joked that I could take the spare room if I ever wanted to disappear. I texted her one word. "Now?" She replied in all caps. "Yes." By noon, I had a key in my hand and a mattress on the floor. No bed frame. No dresser. Just freedom and a door that locked from the inside. I didn't tell my parents. Not because I was being petty, okay, maybe a little, but because I wanted to see how long it would take them to notice. I didn't think it would be long. I mean, I lived under their roof, technically. I was supposed to be home for summer break. My toothbrush was still in the bathroom. My shoes still by the door. My name still on the lease. But the first day passed. Then the second. And nothing. Ethan texted once, some dumb meme about student loans and ramen noodles. I didn't reply. He didn't ask where I was. On day 5, I got a Venmo request from my mom for my portion of the utilities, $73.84. Not even a message. Just a number, like I was a roommate who forgot to pay for internet. That one stung. Not because I couldn't afford it. But because it confirmed what I already feared, they didn't miss me. They missed the money. Camila found me curled up on the couch with my laptop and a cold slice of pizza, just staring at the screen. She didn't ask what was wrong. Just dropped a blanket over my shoulders and said, "You can scream, you know. You don't always have to swallow it." I didn't scream. But I did write. For hours. I wrote every grudge, every slight, every time I was told, "You're so mature for your age," as an excuse to hand me adult responsibilities without the support. I turned my pain into posts, threads, mini essays, and one of them, a 400-word rant titled, "The Discount Daughter," started blowing up. It wasn't meant to go viral. But apparently, the internet is full of mature daughters who got the short end of the stick. A freelance editor reached out, asked if I'd ever considered writing a column. I said no. Then yes. Then sent in a draft the next day. That month, I made $350 writing stories about being invisible. And for the first time, I felt seen. Still no word from my parents. Until the first of the month. And suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. It was 8:13 a.m. on the first of the month when my phone started buzzing like it owed someone money. 4 missed calls. 2 voicemails. 1 text from my mom, in all caps. "Where are you?" I stared at the screen for a full minute before pressing play on the first voicemail. Her voice, frantic but still trying to sound composed, said, "Ava, we need to talk. I just realized the rent auto payment bounced because your portion wasn't deposited. Is everything okay? Call me. Please." Then another. "Ava, this isn't funny. If you're trying to make a point." Click. There it was. Not "we're worried." Not "we miss you." Not even "are you safe?" It was "the rent bounced." I sat there, phone in my hand, pulse strangely calm, while outside the window, someone honked impatiently in traffic like the world hadn't just shifted. Camila peeked her head in and said, "You gonna answer that?" I shook my head. Not yet. Because the truth is, I wasn't done watching them spiral. By noon, Ethan had texted, "Bro, did you move out or something? Mom's freaking out." "Bro, again also, you left your hoodie." "I'm keeping it." I laughed, which surprised me. Not because it was funny, but because I hadn't realized how done I was until that exact moment. My hoodie was the least of their problems. An hour later, Dad called. I didn't pick up. Then he emailed me like we were colleagues in a tense office merger. Subject: urgent housing contribution. "Ava, we need to talk about the lease. Your name is still on the agreement, and the landlord is reaching out. This is a serious matter. Call us back immediately." I took a sip of my cold coffee and hit reply. Typed 5 words. "I don't live there anymore." Then hit send. 15 seconds later, my phone rang again. I let it go to voicemail. Then, for good measure, I blocked the number. That night, I got an email from the landlord himself. Polite, confused. Apparently my parents had told him I'd been traveling. I replied with a short, professional note letting him know I'd vacated the premises, removed all my belongings, and would not be renewing or contributing. I attached a copy of the renter's rights PDF I'd bookmarked months ago, just in case. By morning, I was officially off the lease. That was the moment they knew they'd lost me. Not in a dramatic, "she ran away" kind of way, but in a cold, practical, paper-signed sort of way. I was gone. And no amount of guilt-laced voicemails or passive-aggressive texts could walk that back. It wasn't just that I had left. It was that I had planned it so well, so silently, so surgically, they didn't even see it coming. Because they never really looked at me in the first place. The silence after that was delicious. Not literal silence, of course. My phone still buzzed with the occasional, "Please call us" text, the kind where guilt tries to wear the mask of concern. But for the first time in my life, no one was telling me who I had to be. No one was knocking on my door asking me to babysit, or wash the dishes. Since I was already up. Or proofread Ethan's essays because you're better with words. I wasn't the good girl anymore. I was just Ava. Which, it turns out, is a lot more dangerous than they'd realized. Meanwhile, life in Camila's apartment was chaos in the best way. She'd shove her laundry into the oven when guests came over. We didn't have a proper dining table, so we used a cardboard box and called it Minimalist. There were ants in the bathroom, a weird smell in the hallway, and once we found a mysterious shoe that neither of us owned. But it was mine. All of it. Every imperfect, loud, honest inch. And slowly, I started building something. The editor who liked my post asked for more. I sent in 3 essays, one about growing up as the default babysitter, one about financial gaslighting, and one titled, "Your daughter is not your backup plan." That one exploded. It got syndicated. Shared. Quoted. Someone even turned it into an infographic on Instagram. I laughed when I saw it. They turned my pain into pastel-colored trauma content. But whatever. I got paid. Then came the podcast invite. Then a segment on a local radio station. Then, and this still makes me snort laugh, a DM from a reality show casting agent who thought I'd be perfect for a Family Dynamics series. I declined. But I did forward it to my mom. No reply. Ethan messaged again. This time he tried humor. Bro, so, are we enemies now? Or just like extremely distant roommates who once shared DNA? Bro, also, Mom cried last night. Guilt trip unlocked. Your move. I almost responded. Almost. But then I remembered how he watched me carry groceries alone, clean up after dinner, take the smaller room, all without protest. And he never once said, "This isn't fair." He wasn't the villain. He was just comfortable. But I wasn't built for comfort anymore. I was built for clarity. And clarity said, keep building, keep writing, keep moving. So I did. And then, one day, the check came. It arrived in a plain envelope with no return address, just my name, Ava James, typed neatly in the center. For a second, I thought it might be a jury summons or, I don't know, a cease and desist from my parents, not that they had any legal ground, but dramatic behavior runs deep. But when I tore it open, what I found made my stomach lurch and my hands go cold. A check. From my parents' joint account. Amount, $5,000. Memo. For school. We're sorry. No letter. No explanation. No context. Just a number and 2 signatures that suddenly meant less than the lint in my pocket. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was tempted, though yeah, okay, $5,000 was $5,000, but because it felt like someone had finally cracked open the vault they kept my worth in. And it was empty. They weren't reaching out because they missed me. They were reaching because they were trying to buy peace. It wasn't even the amount. It was the transactional thinking behind it. Like $5,000 could undo years of dismissals, snide comments, overlooked birthdays, and budgeted affection. Camila walked in mid-glare and said, "That looks like a very serious piece of paper." I handed it to her. She read it, snorted, and said, "Well, they're definitely desperate. Should we frame it?" I laughed. I actually laughed. And then I did one better. I wrote an essay titled, "My Parents Sent Me a Check Instead of an Apology." It went viral within 48 hours. Comments poured in. Some people told me to cash it and run. Some said I was ungrateful. But most of them said, same. Same gift card birthdays. Same invisible labor. Same half-hearted attempts at reconciliation wrapped in $signs. One woman messaged me, "You just put into words what I've been trying to scream at my family for a decade." Thank you. Another wrote, "I gave the check back. You gave them nothing, and still won." Iconic. The article landed me a paid column. Weekly. With my name in bold and a tagline that read, "Ava James, former good girl turned truth teller." And just like that, my silence turned into a megaphone. Meanwhile, I kept the check. Not to cash, never that, but I did fold it neatly and tape it to my wall. Right next to the lease termination letter and the original copy of The Discount Daughter. My victory shrine. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Because for the first time, they were the ones waiting to be seen. And I wasn't sure I was in the mood to look. By month 3, my name was being passed around like a warning shot at brunch tables and group chats labeled Family Matters. Not because I'd done something scandalous, but because I'd stopped being polite about the favoritism everyone else kept pretending wasn't real. I started getting messages from distant cousins I hadn't heard from in years. One wrote, "I always thought Aunt Linda was weird about Ethan, but I didn't know it was that bad." Another said, "My mom said your blog is a little aggressive, which means I printed it and put it on the fridge." Meanwhile, my parents went quiet. Not frozen, not furious, just quiet in that eerie, "we don't know what to say so we'll say nothing" kind of way. I expected another check. Or a letter. Or some contrived invitation to talk. Instead, they sent Ethan. He showed up outside the bakery one Thursday, leaning against his car like it was a prop in a high school drama. I was grabbing cinnamon rolls, earbuds in, hair a mess, when I saw him wave. I considered turning around. But part of me was curious, not about what he'd say, but about how he'd say it. "Hey," he said, like we just missed each other at lunch. "Can we talk?" I stared at him, then at his shoes, then at the fact that he'd driven all the way across town without warning. That wasn't an accident. That was assignment energy. We sat on a bench out front. He smelled like mint and desperation. "Look," he started. "I know things have been weird. And Mom's been kind of losing it since the check. They don't get why you're so mad." I blinked. "Mad? You know what I mean," he said, scratching his neck. "Like cutting contact, writing all that stuff. Blowing up the family online." I cut him off. "I didn't blow up anything. I told the truth. If that sets off explosives, maybe you should ask who left the dynamite." He winced. "I'm not trying to argue. I'm just, Mom and Dad keep saying they didn't know you felt that way. That if you just said something." I laughed, short and sharp. "I did. Just not in ways they wanted to hear." He looked down at his hands. "They're scared, Ava. Not of you exactly. But of how easy it was for you to leave. How quiet you made it. That's what's haunting them. Not the articles. Not the rent. The silence." That hit different. Because he was right. I didn't scream. I didn't throw plates. I didn't threaten to run. I just left. With precision. With calm. With no drama to distract from the message. "I do not need you." I stood up, brushing crumbs off my jeans. "Tell them I'm doing fine. Better than fine, actually. And if they ever want to talk, really talk, not throw money at me or send messengers, they know how to dial a number and start with 'I'm sorry.'" Ethan nodded slowly. "Okay. I'll tell them." As he got back in his car, I remembered something. "Wait," I called out. He turned. I tossed him the cinnamon roll bag. "For the road. You're still my brother. But you're not my middleman." He smiled faintly. "Noted." And just like that, he drove away. No speeches. No sides taken. Just a brother trying to find the line between loyalty and truth. And me? I was finally standing on the other side of that line. It happened on a rainy Sunday, the kind of quiet drizzle that makes everything feel like it's moving in slow motion. I was sitting on my second-hand couch, laptop open, halfway through writing an article titled, "When Your Family Misses the Rent But Not You," when my phone rang again. Unknown number. Again. This time, I picked up. "Ava?" My mother's voice, soft. Not her usual clipped, overly polite tone, no passive-aggressive warmth this time. Just human. "I'm listening," I said. She took a shaky breath. "Your father and I, we know we failed you." I stayed quiet. "We told ourselves you were fine. Because you never asked for help. Because you never made noise. And that made it easier to forget that maybe you needed us the most." Still, I didn't speak. Part of me wanted to scream, where was this energy when I was 17, Googling how to apply for aid alone in the dark? But the other part of me, the part that had grown teeth and backbone since leaving, just let her talk. "We've been reading your essays," she continued. "The one about the couch. About being the daughter who carries everything so others can rest. Ava, I didn't know you felt that alone." "You didn't ask," I said. Calm. Unmoving. "You just assumed. Because I was capable. Because I was quiet. And because Ethan needed more in ways that were easier to notice." She didn't argue. She didn't deflect. She just whispered, "I'm sorry." Then, in the tiniest voice I'd ever heard her use, she added, "Is there any way back?" I closed my laptop. Stared at the raindrops streaking down the window. The version of me that once would have jumped at that question, the girl desperate for any scrap of attention, was gone. But the woman sitting here now? She knew the answer. "There's no way back." I said. Only forward. And that means if you want to know me, really know me, you don't get to skip to the good parts. Silence. Not cold, just full. Heavy. Real. We want to try, she said. Not because we miss your rent. Not because we're ashamed. But because we finally see you. That part landed. Maybe it wasn't perfect. But it was honest. That night I called Ethan. Mom called. I told him. He let out a long sigh. Yeah, she cried after. Said it felt like losing you all over again. You didn't lose me, I said. You just didn't keep me. We talked for an hour. No sarcasm. No memes. Just real conversation, about childhood, pressure, and what it felt like to grow up in the same house but not the same world. And then I did something I didn't think I'd ever do. I emailed my parents. Subject line, if we're going to start over, here's who I am now. I attached a draft of the keynote speech I'd been asked to give at a university panel for young women in tech. It was raw, bold, unapologetic, not filtered for their comfort. 3 hours later, my dad replied. One sentence. I wish I'd seen this version of you sooner. And I wrote back. She was always there. You just looked past her. I didn't need their approval. But knowing they finally saw me, not the good girl, not the default helper, not the invisible backbone, that mattered. So no, I didn't forgive them on the spot. There was no big family dinner, no dramatic hug. But I left the door unlocked. And sometimes, that's the bravest ending of all. Not walking back. Not shutting it forever. Just standing in your own space, finally whole, and saying, if you come in again, you'll have to meet me this time. Not your version. Not your fantasy. Me.